So welcome. Really looking forward to reviewing some stuff today with everyone. Yeah, so we're talking about OSS, which is not out of school suspension or oh so sweet, but if you're paying attention to the first slide, it's actually open source software.
What?
And open source software is software whose source code is made available to the public. You can just see it online. It's pretty sweet. Anyone can view, use, or modify or distribute the software. So very cool. Some of my favorite applications are open source, including Mozilla Firefox, Linux, and the VLC Media Player. Very exciting stuff. So let's talk about some of the main tenets of OSS. There's a little bit of transparency, a little bit of collaboration, and a little bit of freedom, which is pretty sweet. It's freedom to customize and improve upon the original software, which can lead to rapid innovation and the sharing of knowledge across the open source community. Very cool. And for open source, really the license is the key. So we can see on the right-hand side here, this is the MIT license. Here are a couple licenses that we utilize the most, the Apache 2.0 or the MIT license. Picking the correct license is really important. We'll talk about that in a second. If you want to learn more about open source licenses, opensource.org is a really great place to check out the open source initiative. It maintains a list of all the licenses, basically. And the definition of open source from them not only deals with having access to the source code and being able to create derivative works, but also no discrimination for different groups of people or fields of business, stuff like that, which is really cool. And another cool thing is that they are actually we're currently working on the definition of open source AI, which I'm sure we'll all check out soon. So let's talk about OSS at Sourcetoad, or OSAS. So, Sourcetoad, the agency work that we do, is called work for hire. In our professional services agreement, it's a work for hire agreement. This basically means that if a client pays, they own the work that we do, basically. And this includes the configuration of the code, of course, and any packages we utilize. But they can't own certain things. Like you can't own MySQL, or you can't own these open source packages. So just wanted to note that, but we are licensed to use them because they're open source. Sourcetoad pays careful consideration to these licenses. So this is really important. So one thing that to note here when we talk about our ecosystem of all the different stages or steps to this ecosystem, so much of the code that we are running in production environments we didn't actually write. And there's a huge benefit to that to get to market a lot faster. Think of these as tools to get a job done much more quickly. We're really standing on the shoulders of giants here. We started off at the actual hardware or the physical server here, which we don't have to mess with too much, luckily, because AWS takes care of the majority of that, which is pretty cool. You have the infrastructure operating system, which we generally use as Linux, open source. The operating system packages, so these are the programming frameworks like PHP, MySQL, Redis, caching utility, all open source. The application frameworks like Laravel is one of our choice frameworks, and Vue.js, open source. Framework packages then get incorporated into those frameworks like Laravel, open source. And then we have the client's code base, which is where everything gets linked together. So there's a lot that we can utilize from these tools. Application maintenance is super important for all of our clients' projects, because these packages and these frameworks that we utilize, they go out of date. They have security vulnerabilities that get disclosed, and we have to update them. So it's super important to do that on a regular basis. We use a service called Dependabot through GitHub, which is where all of our code is stored for this purpose. So there's some times when you do not want to use open source. For example, if the license isn't open source, that would be pretty obvious. But when a better alternative exists, like a commercial integration, sometimes there's commercial integration that you can pay for. It's like, hey, it makes sense to probably use this. If packages aren't supported well, you can kind of tell this on the repository if they don't have a lot of likes, they haven't had a commit of code in 2 or 3 years. High maintenance packages. I'm not sure how to determine what a high maintenance package is, but maybe difficult to upgrade on a regular basis would be another example. And then low effort to recreate. Now I did want to note, so for example, with the low effort to recreate, if only a small part of the vendor package is utilized, then we can just write that. We can just do that very easily. So that's another. I did want to note that this is, of course, all included in a training that we have that everybody can check out internally. Let's talk about some of the benefits of OSIS. Flexibility is the first big one. There's a ton of customization opportunities. Transparency is another. In all of our README files in the code repository, we can see every single vendor package that was included. And this is great because clients can view and understand the underlying software, what was really the software was built on. We can also tap into community support here, broader community for support for updates and patches like we talked about. And the two big ones are probably speed and cost efficiency, right? Got faster time to market here because all this stuff is pre-built and ready to just incorporate, and a lot of cost savings too. Because we can leverage these solutions. So I just grabbed a partial example from one of our code bases. This is just maybe like a fifth of it of all the packages used, maybe even less. Just talking about two here, Guzzle and the Laravel framework. I did some quick calculations about what it would cost to recreate those frameworks, and it's easily in the millions of dollars, like upwards of tens of millions of dollars. It's crazy. So the fictional client comes in the door, we're like, yeah, we'd love to get started on that MVP for you. How does October 2030 sound? Like, that's probably not going to work with our clients, right? So we really love open source at Sourcetoad. And one of our core competencies is really selecting, implementing the right package for the right product. And as we work through this process of selecting these packages, we're going to run into issues, right? We're going to see bugs in the vendor packages that we incorporate in these open source packages. So it's important that, just like we would, bill our time to fix things in our code base, if we can fix the vendor package, if it's easier to do that, we do that, and we can push a fix upstream. We would bill for that just like we would regular application development. And of course, if we're using community support, we would never do things like disclose or post like clients' data on these community forums. So I wanted to bring to your attention to really sweet links here. You can check out opensource.sourcetoad.com, which will have a UI refresh very soon. And let's not forget one of our favorite packages, open source packages, the Apk Tool from the great Connor Tumbleson. So, yeah, this has been a talk. And does anybody have any questions?
Can it be open source without an open source license, though? Can it truly be open source?
I'll have to consult our.
Because you had that, and I was like, confusing.
No, it can't be. All right, well, thanks, everybody.